we knew that in our own community here in the Rochester area, and really, again, all across New York State, people were really eager to get back out, but, safely, and to make sure that they were comfortable with where they were visiting. And so we had a big push this summer on our local audience, telling them to rediscover Rochester. It's time to be a tourist in your own town and to get out and explore some of the things that we just may take for granted living here. So with that being said, I will show you why you should rediscover Rochester. Are you feeling inspired? Are you ready to go out and rediscover Rochester? Well, I hope so, because I'm going to give you about a million more reasons why. So again, just a little bit of information about Rochester. We are, as I said, the third largest city in New York State. As you can see, we are very conveniently located for exploring not just the Rochester area, but really, the entire Finger Lakes region. Certainly, we're convenient to Western New York. We're just 90 minutes from Niagara Falls. When the border is open, we're under 3 hours from Toronto, so really well positioned. We like to say that we're the perfect base for your upstate New York getaway. Okay, so we have a few things that we are just do really well here in Rochester. And I'm going to kind of go through each of these in a little bit more detail. But so you can kind of see where we're going and the different topics that we'll talk through. But we definitely excel in the areas of family travel, arts and culture, women's rights, civil rights, outdoor recreation, history, wining and dining. I'll talk more about why we are the Flower City. So to kick things off, family. I'm not sure, if you're looking to plan a trip for any extended families, multi-generational travel, traveling with younger children, but Rochester is really the perfect fit for families of all ages, of all sizes, of all types. We are really, truly one of the best destinations for families. We have more than 75 experiences for families within an hour's drive of Rochester. So chief among them include the Strong Museum, which I talked about earlier, which you can see the Strong pictured in the upper right-hand corner. The Strong is really, there's nothing else like it, and it is a must-visit experience. So the Strong Museum Play, must visit. On the left, we have here, this is the Strasbourg Planetarium at the Rochester Museum and Science Center. The planetarium at the Museum and Science Center actually just received a little bit of an update. In 2019, they finalized that. So it has new cameras in place and some new seating and new features, but it's actually one of the largest planetariums in the country. And they have a wide range of programming on top of everything that goes on at the museum itself. Again, a must visit for all ages. And then in addition to those two, the Seneca Park Zoo, which has been a really popular spot for folks just to get outside, see the animals, especially during the past few months while we've been in more of a quarantine mode, but they have been taking a lot of precautions, and they also are in the midst of ongoing expansion. So actually at the end of the end of 2018 it was, they introduced a whole bunch of new animals to the zoo, including giraffes, adorable red pandas, and even some zebras. So in addition, for families, many other museums that you may not think of typically as family-friendly places, they really do have programs and offerings in place for families, such as the George Easton Museum, the Memorial Art Gallery, and not to mention all the wonderful things you can do outdoors, family-friendly restaurants, or just other recreational things like going go-kart racing, racing at RPM speedways, going to Lasertron, or going to, rock climbing at Rock Ventures. There's really something for every family. So in terms of arts and culture as well, so we talked about some of the family-friendly museums, but we also have a really wonderful breadth of other museums to experience and enjoy. And again, these have all just reopened after, sometime closed because of COVID. So the George Easton Museum, earlier I picked like what my favorite museum was, but it really is such a toss-up because the George Easton Museum is something that's so special. The Easton Museum is located in the historic home of George Eastman, founder of Kodak. His beautiful mansion is located on East Avenue here in the city of Rochester, which is just a lovely place to not only visit the museum, but I encourage you to park your car, get out, stretch your legs, walk up and down East Avenue, enjoy the sights of these beautiful old historic homes. But the Easton Museum is actually the oldest photography museum in the world, and it's home to one of the largest collections of film in the world. And we're really excited because the museum actually just cut the ribbon on a brand new visitor center. So it was so thrilling for our team and our community to have something to cut the ribbon on and celebrate the opening of, especially during this time. So this new visitor center, which you can see in the photo on the right, it's beautiful, it's modern. They've brought back a Kodak Colorama as part of so you really, as soon as you park your car, you're now going to see something from the museum's archives. Right now they have this older photo of the Taj Mahal on display. There's a theater at the Dryden Theater at the museum, new gift shop, new cafe, the list goes on. It's a must visit. And when I think about like socially distant activities, like I think, obviously wearing your mask, but it's just such a lovely way to kind of take a reprieve from everything, everything else that's going on, and just to spend some time amongst all these beautiful art and cultural treasures that we have here. So we talked about the East Museum. Next up is another one of my absolute favorites, the Memorial Art Gallery. I mentioned earlier, best depth and breadth of a collection in New York State, outside of New York City. And I'm so excited to share that starting in October 25th, I believe, the MAG is going to be debuting a brand new to us Warhol exhibit. So this is a preview of that collection on the right. But again, wonderful art. Check out the Warhol exhibit, look at the other treasures that are inside. And with all of our attractions, as I said, they're open. Most are encouraging timed ticketing. So again, just plan in advance, book your ticket, you'll be good to go. Okay, so we talked about family, we talked about arts and culture. You can't talk about Rochester without talking about our rich history, especially as it relates to women's rights. So 2020, in addition to being a year that I'm sure a lot of us want to forget, however, this year is the significance of several major milestone anniversaries as it relates to the women's suffrage movement and women's history. So stay with me, but here we go. Number one, 2020 is the 200th birthday of Susan B. Anthony, who spent many years of her life living and working in Rochester. Obviously, she's a legendary suffragist that worked to get women the right to vote. So Anthony, this is her 200th birthday. She lived in Rochester, she worked in Rochester, and she is buried in Rochester's historic Mount Hope Cemetery. So it is her birthday. This year also is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, and it's an election year. So, it's an opportunity just to be reminded of the importance of voting and having the right to vote. So you really can't tell any of those stories without talking about Rochester, New York, and the role and the legacy of the women's rights and women's suffrage movement, which really, there was the first convention in Seneca Falls, just east of Rochester, but the work itself happened in Rochester. Someone recently said to me, think about Silicon Valley. That's where, if you want to be in the tech industry, that's where you go. That's where the work is done. That's where the movers, the movement makers are. And that's what Rochester was. Rochester was like the Silicon Valley of the women's suffrage movement. And I love that comparison because this is really where history happened. So for those of you who want to learn more about Rochester's role in women's suffrage and women's history, must start with a visit to the National Susan B. Anthony Museum and House. It's the historic landmark home of Susan B. Anthony, center on our slide here. From there, you can go to the Susan B. Anthony Park around the corner from the house and take in this wonderful statue entitled Let's Have Tea, which pictures two of Rochester's most famous sons and daughters. And that would be, of course, Susan B. Anthony and her friend, both in real life and certainly in the history books, Frederick Douglass, who also lived and worked in Rochester. Then your tour is going to take you over to Mount Hope Cemetery, where you can see Susan B. Anthony's grave. And this picture is actually from Election Day 2016, but I'm sure we'll see something similar in just a few weeks, but it's become a little bit of a tradition to place your I voted sticker on Susan B. Anthony's grave, because of course, Anthony died before women had the right to vote, but were it not for women like her, I wouldn't have the right to vote today. So really exciting. If you're at all interested in women's history, this is a wonderful place for you to explore. But as I said, we're also the home of Frederick Douglass. So Douglass, of course, was born into slavery and escaped slavery and became a legendary abolitionist. He too was considered a suffragist. Certainly, he was present at the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848, but he lived for longer than anywhere else. He lived in Rochester. And this is actually a quote that you can see in a mural here. The mural is on a school that is in the in the Highland Park neighborhood here in the city of Rochester, and this is very close to where the Douglass family farm was when he lived here in the 1800s. But this is a quote that he had, which was, "I shall always feel most at home, more at home in Rochester than anywhere else in the country." And we're very proud to be the home of Douglass and to have been, really just this hotbed of these incredible figures in history that have changed our world as we know it today. So Frederick Douglass's birthday, his 200th birthday was 2 years ago. So he was 2 years older than his dear friend, Susan B. Anthony. So to commemorate Frederick Douglass's 200th birthday, a series of statues, which you'll see one of them here in the upper left-hand corner, were erected around Rochester, but there's about a dozen of them. Now, the significance of the statue is because Rochester is actually the home of a Frederick Douglass statue that when it was put up in, I want to say 1900, 1905, but when it was put up, it was actually the first statue in the United States that was built in honor of an African-American person. So we're really proud that statue is still on display here in Rochester. You can find it in Highland Park. And so replicas of that original statue are what went up all around town. You can actually, it's a self-guided tour now to go to all the different areas where these statues are. And you can look at the website douglasstours.com to learn what the significance is of those different locations. So this statue is actually the one that's in Mount Hope Cemetery, which is where Frederick Douglass is buried alongside Susan B. Anthony. And then also, Rochester has a rich history as having a presence on the Underground Railroad. There's plenty of ways to learn more about that, but this here is Kelsey's Landing, which is actually a location that's on the Genesee River in the city of Rochester. It was the last stop on the Underground Railroad for slaves seeking freedom. In addition to these Frederick Douglass specific sites too, we do have, I encourage you to check out the Rochester Museum and Science Center, as they do have a permanent exhibit that explores Rochester's history as it relates to the Civil Rights Movement and the Underground Railroad. All right, so we've talked about art, culture, women's rights, civil rights history. Well, I know we've all been spending so much time indoors, and we want to continue to find ways to go outside. So Rochester really is a wonderful option for outdoor recreation. Biking, we have wonderful trails for biking, whether you're looking for protected paths like the canal tow path. There's a wonderful Genesee Riverway trail, which is what this picture is here, that goes alongside that trail, countless other trails and parks. And then also just if you want to do any kind of like off-road biking or more mountain biking, limitless options for that as well. Plenty of spots to go hiking, kayaking, paddling, and just wonderful outdoor spaces to enjoy. And then we're also a really great spot for fishing. So being that we're based on Lake Ontario, you can take advantage of the incredible fishing that there is in the lake. This picture actually is from the Genesee River inside Lower Falls Gorge. So this picture of this gentleman fishing is taken in the city of Rochester. If you have not been to Lower Falls, I absolutely recommend you check it out. The foliage right now is stunning, but really whether you want to explore on a bike or go fishing or hiking or whatever, there's something for you here and beautiful natural outdoor sites to enjoy. I'll go over this one quickly, but again, we are a wonderful destination for fans of history. So we've got the Susan B. Anthony legacy and story, of course, our connections to Frederick Douglass, and our rich history with Kodak and George Eastman. And he, again, is just such a fascinating person to learn about. Keeping our Silicon Valley theme going, he was kind of like the Steve Jobs of his time. And so if you haven't been to the Easton Museum, I highly encourage you to check it out. Also, during the warmer months, but there is some special programming during the fall and winter. Genesee Country Village and Museum, largest living history museum in New York State, brings you back in time to a 19th century village come to life. Wonderful place to learn about our history. And certainly the Rochester Museum and Science Center is another excellent location with which to learn about both our local and state and regional history. Okay, so for foodies, my message to you on food is to go out and support your local restaurants. They are needing your support now more than ever. So just to kind of help underscore that message, here is a piece that we just created aimed at supporting our local restaurants. Enjoy.
The role that restaurants play in our community is huge. It's a tough business. It's not just feeding people. We employ your neighbors, that community feeling, bringing people together.
Restaurants are the lifeblood of the Rochester community. There's something about being in person at a restaurant, that adrenaline, that energy, just like that spark in the air. Nothing compares to it.
I don't want to own a restaurant during a pandemic again. It tested our abilities to see what we could do and how quickly we could adapt. This has been a really challenging time for restaurants. We're only at 50% capacity. A lot of us had to close down for at least a couple of months. We are so grateful for our customers. They've been amazing. They've been so kind. We want to get the information out and let you know how we're doing things safely. We all wear masks. We are all following our protocols. Customers know that they can have a safe experience.
When a guest walks through the door at Good Luck, we are so grateful for the people who have supported us over the past 6 months. We would not be here without them. They're why we do what we do. The best way that the community can support restaurants right now is to go to them and dine or be at the bar if you feel comfortable. You know, if you don't, get takeout. If you don't feel comfortable getting takeout, see if they have merchandise or gift cards. We don't want these restaurants that we know and love just close their doors forever. The community has to come together and they have to support restaurants in any way that they can.
This really showed how resilient we are and how Rochester and the restaurant industry has come together in a way I never could have dreamed. It really did show us how great people can be.
I love that. I'm always inspired to go out and support our local restaurants, but there's so many wonderful dining options here. If you haven't been to any of the amazing restaurants in the city of Rochester recently, I encourage you to check them out. There's some really talented chefs that are doing really great things, and love, and of course, neighborhood favorites are wonderful too. Support your favorite restaurants, but check out someplace new. And then lastly, I'll just touch on the fact. So Rochester is known, our monikers include Flour City, Flour, like what you would bake with, and also the Flower City, Flower. And that is a very fitting name for us because, and I could share more about the history, but I'll just say that we are ripe with gardens and wonderful places for flower lovers to enjoy. So there's wonderful gardens around, but of course, nothing is more majestic than the sight of thousands of lilacs in bloom in Rochester's Highland Park every May. So yes, we do host the Lilac Festival. I hope, my fingers crossed, it will be back in May 2021. But the Highland Park lilacs are, as I said, the largest collection of lilacs in North America. I'm born and raised in Rochester, and I did not know that they were the largest collection until I started working at Visit Rochester. So that is your fun fact for the day. But definitely take advantage of the beautiful gardens that are in this area to enjoy. And I'll also just mention the Erie Canal. There are a number of canal side communities that are throughout the Rochester area that are must visits. The canal really functions as the second main street for these communities. And whether you get, on the canal on a tour boat or a kayak, or you bike or hike alongside it, it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I highly recommend you check it out. And my partners here on the call today are sharing more about what's going on in the other parts of the state. But as I said, Rochester is a wonderful place to start your trip and to explore the rest of New York State. And in closing, we're just scratching the surface on all the things there are to see and do here in Rochester, New York. But this is a nice visual, kind of gives you a snapshot in one glance of just everything there is to do here. And with that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions.
That's
Okay.
wonderful.
That sure is. That was just terrific, Rachel. Thanks for going through all of that. I'm a lifelong resident here of Rochester, and I learned some things today. So you got me excited to go see some of our heritage in particular that I wasn't aware of quite how significant it was. Thank you for sharing that. So we've been looking through some questions in the chat box there. Do you have one that you want to start us off with, Laura?
Yes, I have several questions that came up for you. One of them is, if you had, now this is putting you on the spot, Rachel, so I apologize in advance. But if you had just one day in the area, what local restaurant, they ask, would you recommend that represents Rochester?
Wow, that's really difficult. I guess I would say if you could only go to one,
or an area maybe to explore for restaurants, since you mentioned
Sure. How about this? An area, I would recommend you check out the Park Ave neighborhood in the city of Rochester. It's, I didn't really spend too much time talking about the different neighborhoods and their different personalities, but it's a very vibrant area to walk alongside. There's a number of different restaurants and cafes. And so you can kind of get in there, you know, there's one intersection where you can actually get literally the 8 or 9 different like ethnic cuisines all in one intersection. It's like a little mini UN, and you know, it's corner of Park Avenue and Berkeley in Rochester. So I would recommend that area, and anything you find there will be a great bet.
Well, that's a good tip. As I say, I love to go out when we can. And, you know, you mentioned supporting the restaurants. And I think that one of the benefits that you mentioned, or one of the perks I think we should do or consider with Christmas time coming, giving gift certificates to our local, restaurants and local shop, small stores. I think that is great right now. Get the money into the hands of the local businesses. So keep that in mind, everybody. You know, Christmas is coming before you know it.
That's a great tip, Laura. So, yeah. Rachel, there's the Genesee River that goes through Rochester, but also the Erie Canal goes through Rochester. And I think there are boats that run on the canal that you can go up and down the canal. Do you know, do those run in the fall if they're operating now?
So the canal actually just closed last week was the last day. They closed the season a little bit earlier this year just because of everything that has been going on with COVID. But during the summer months, there is the Colonial Belle that docks out of Fairport, and the Sand Patch tour boat that docks out of Pittsburgh. Those are both on the canal. Our friends at Rochester Pedal Tours do a paddle boat out of the Port of Rochester that goes on the river, I believe. So, and then there's a number of different spots you can rent kayaks and canoes, or even boats just to get out on the waterways.
Terrific. That's so next spring we can get on the canal in one of those boats.
That sounds
I have one more question that came up. Can I stick it in there for you real quick?
Sure.
Okay. Somebody asked if the public market is open in through the winter, or if it closes, before the snow flies, basically.
Great question. Oh my gosh, I didn't even mention the public market. Yes, the public market is open all year round, open through the winter. The only days that is closed, I believe, are Christmas, maybe New Year's, but it's open every Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday all year round, even the winter. And there's a beautiful, in the last couple of years, newly constructed indoor shed as well with a number of purveyors. So highly recommend a visit to the market. They've been doing a great job with social distancing, and masks are required, but it's wonderful to go out and support local farmers at this time.
That's wonderful. Great. Thank you. And does anybody else have any other questions that came up? Because I have 2 more, but if you want to stick some of yours in, Laura, go ahead.
Well, I have something about the winter, since we just were talking about the public market. Any updates? Can you tell us about the winter festival that was such a popular new activity for us, with the igloos and everything? People, I understand, flock to it in great numbers. How about this year? What are you thinking?
So unfortunately, just because of the ongoing pandemic, the Rock Holiday Village, which is what you're referencing, yes, has been canceled for this year. But the organizers are looking for ways to maybe still do some kind of pop-up shopping experience. But yes, definitely look for it for next year, because it's really been a magical return to downtown in the holiday season.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. And I know you also have, you mentioned the zoo. You were mentioning that. Can you tell me, what is a Zoo Brew? Someone is asking about that. Is that something you're familiar with?
Yes. So again, I'm not sure if they did it this year just because of everything going on, but usually once a month they will do an after hours event at the zoo that's for 21 plus. So grown-ups can come and can drink a beer or wine or a soda and spend some time with the animals, and a portion of every ticket from a Zoo Brew goes towards animal conservation. So it's an after hours, and a lot of the museums too, RMSC, the Strong, they'll do after hour adult only events. So it's a great way if you feel like, well, I can't go there, I don't have kids, first of all, you can go anywhere, anytime. But yes, they do some fun after hours programming.
Fantastic.
So silly question on the zoo, is it open year round?
It is open year round. Yep. And they have some shortened hours in the winter, but open year round.
Terrific. And are there new exhibits there, new things that have been announced that we haven't covered that people should want to know about?
I was just say, if you haven't been in a couple of years, definitely go check out the giraffes, the red pandas. I think they just added a new rhino, and I think they have some new goats headed to the zoo as well.
So giraffes and rhinos in Rochester, New York in January. That's something I've got to see.
There you go. And Craig, I do have one more question. Do we have time for one more, do you think?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Oh, wonderful. I had my own grandchildren come from California with my son and his wife to visit the Strong Museum of Play. And they said they have nothing as fabulous as that in California. That's not the question, by the way. But what I want to know, or one of the visitors wanted to know, is, are you making people like pick a time that they want to go to, like keep the amount of people in the place, to a lower number during the virus?
Yes, so most of the museums are doing timed ticketing. So definitely encourage with everything, whether you want to get a reservation for dinner or buying tickets for museum, everything is open. Just purchase your tickets in advance.
Oh, great. And they give a time slot so they can plan their day around it then?
Yes.
That's perfect.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Yep. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to spend some time with you all. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to share my contact information. But thank you so much for the opportunity.
Rachel, thank you for joining us. It's great.